Yes. Just get my pen. Just grab a pencil. Kia ora koutou. Reconvene our Infrastructure Committee meeting for today. Just to update the order of business that we're going to deal with before I adjourn again, is we're going to take items 2, 3, 5, which is a presentation from Countdown, and then take 4, which is public comment, before adjourning back to community development. So item 2 is additional items. Are there any? There being none. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Are there any? There being none. That's with pleasure that I now call item 5, which is a presentation from Countdown, and welcome Matthew Granger down from Auckland, who's the Acting General Manager for the Format, Development and Property of Woolworths New Zealand Limited, to share about their state-of-the-art distribution hub and development in the Northeast Industrial, and also update on Pioneer Highway site plans. And welcome. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to have the opportunity to update the council on the projects that we have going on around the city. So I guess a little bit of overview of Woolworths New Zealand. We employ around 20,000 New Zealanders through our stores, our distribution centres and our support office. And we operate supermarkets under the Countdown, Fresh Choice and Super Value banners. And obviously in Palmerston North we have 4 supermarkets at the moment, and our existing distribution centre in Mako Road. So today I was here just to give the council a brief update on our project out in the Northeast Industrial Park, the new distribution centre. This is a picture of how it's planned to look when it's finished. A few key facts. The site area is 8.8 hectares, and the building area proposed is almost 39,000 square metres, so almost 4 hectares. And this will replace our existing facility in Mako Road. And to give you a scale for that, that's about 12,000 square metres, so it's more than 3 times the size. We're planning on achieving a 4-star Green Star rating for the building. And once it's completed, we'll be increasing our team by around 50 new roles to take us to around 150 people based on that site in total. And construction's well underway now. We've got more than 100 people working on site, and we're targeting to go live in August next year. Construction cost is around 50 million, plus fit out of 13 million. And I'd like to thank council and council officers for the collaborative approach that was taken through the consenting process. We've found council to be very helpful and constructive. This is a plan of the building and the site. So Alderson Drive's down at the bottom of the page. The entrance is off the cul-de-sac at the end of Alderson Drive, and the trucks will actually move inside the building for unloading, so it's all out of the weather, and for loading of outbound goods as well. This is an ambient distribution centre, so it's not refrigerated or frozen, and it's planned to move around 450,000 cartons a week to stores around our Lower North Island network. So if you imagine a line roughly from Gisborne to New Plymouth, it's stores within that zone. There's a few photos here. These are actually a little bit old. I drove past the site this morning. It's a lot further progressed. This was sort of early on in construction. You can see one of the roof sections there on the ground, so they're being sort of constructed on the ground and then lifted into place. there's 2 bays complete there now. We're up to about 6. So that kind of photo gives you a bit of a feel for the scale of the building. And that's really it on that one. And I'm happy to take questions at the end, of course. And also, while I'm here, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to update the council on the Pioneer Highway Countdown Supermarket. So that's a picture of how that's planned to look. It's in Pioneer Highway in Awapuni. The site area is 1.8 hectares, and the supermarket building is just over 3,600 square metres, and that will include a cafe at the entrance as well. We're estimating around 80 new Countdown team members to be employed in the supermarket, and there's about 50 construction jobs as well. The building consents are in processing now, and we're planning on starting construction later this month and opening in August next year. So it's going to be a big month for us next year in Palmerston North in August. Construction costs about $15.5 million, and plus fit out of about $6.5 million. And again, thank you to the council for the collaborative approach, working through consents for that project. And the other thing to note is we're currently working, the consent for that development's in 2 stages. The first stage is the supermarket, which we're getting underway on very soon, and the second stage is a retail block on the sort of front corner of the site, which we're just working through and refining the plans for that at the moment, and planning to proceed with that as a second stage. This is a site plan here. The retail block that I referred to is sort of up at the top right-hand corner of the page. And then these are a few photos. There's a sort of intersection upgrade at the entrance to where it joins Pioneer Highway, and we're going through a design process on that at the moment. This is a sort of close-up with the cafe tenancy on the left-hand side there, and the entrance to the supermarket on the right. And this is sort of coming in from the Rugby Street entrance. So that was really the key things I had for my presentation today. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you, Matthew. Is there any questions from members? Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Matthew, for your presentation. I'm really pleased to hear that you are targeting a 4-star green building rating or whatever. It's a long question. Are you targeting this 4-star for both of your buildings or only for the one, the big facility, number one? Number two, if not, why not for this building in the town? And do you see what kind of benefits do you see after getting your 4-star rating?
So the first part was about whether we're doing it for the supermarket as well. Yeah, so for the industrial buildings, there's an established Green Star rating tool, and which we're using for the distribution centre. For supermarkets, there's actually not an established rating tool yet through the Green Building Council. We are working through a process at the moment with the Green Building Council to establish a methodology for achieving a Green Star rating for a supermarket. And we're working through that on a project in Nelson at the moment, which is just starting construction now. So once we've got through that, we'll be able to effectively agree how it'll be rated and measured for a supermarket. What we know from that work so far is that our sort of standard that we build to, which we are building in this one, is around about a 4-star rating as well. So this will be equivalent to a 4-star Green Star rating. And then the second part of the question was, what was the benefits? Obviously, there's benefits for a better internal environment for our team and customers, and also energy savings obviously from an environmental perspective, that's fantastic, but also there's, operational cost savings from that as well through those efficiencies.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and 2 questions. Thanks, Matthew, for travelling down to speak to us. Really value Woolworths' presence in the city here. First question is just around the development of the distribution centre and Railway Road. We've had recently, I guess, quite a bit of community concern expressed around road safety in that area, and in fact, we're in a consultation process around adjustments to speed limits and things like that in that area, and just wondered, given that you're here, if you might have anything you might want to contribute to that discussion?
Yeah, we did put in a submission in support of the change to the speed limit there. From a safety perspective, we think it would be a good idea.
Can you give us a sense of how much traffic could be generated through that distribution centre?
Not off the top of my head, but I could get those figures for you. Yeah, that'd be a significant number of vehicles a day.
Yeah, that'd be great to be able to access that information. The second question was just noting your comment around constructive engagement with council around the consenting process in both cases, and noting that the Pioneer Highway case was an extended process, let's say, and I guess was I suppose wanting to really clarify and understand from your perspective that where it has landed and that it sits in a positive space, because certainly my perception of the process over time was that at times there was quite some tension there, so it'd be useful just to really understand how that's landed.
Yeah, I wasn't with the company at the time of the original consent, so probably not able to really comment in detail on that, but more recently there was a minor amendment to the consent which was a good process with council to work through that and make sure that issues were addressed in a constructive way. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hapeta.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Matthew, for coming down from Auckland. Just a question around the Pioneer Highway property. What kind of retail are you looking at complementing your property on Pioneer Highway?
I think we're still working through that, but it's likely to have a mixture of sort of everyday convenience and sort of food and beverage type tenancies. That's sort of
at a restaurant kind of thing?
Yeah, quite likely a restaurant type of tenancy at the front, yes.
Thank you. You're looking at a liquor store?
No, we generally, we obviously through the supermarket we sell wine and beer, but we're not looking at a separate liquor store, no.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Matthew, for your presentation. Your current site at Makamaka Road, have you any future developments for that, or what's your plans for it?
We own that site currently, so we'll once it's the new facility's up and running, we'll look to sell that site. So we can't really comment on what will go there.
No, that's right. I just wondered whether you were retaining it or. Yep, thank you.
Just doubly check if there's any other questions before we go into comment. No further questions. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you very much.
Feel free to stay. We're going to enter into some comment. I'll move the recommendation that the Infrastructure Committee receive the presentation for information, seconded by Councillor Hapeta. Open it up for any comments. Thank you. You can withdraw to the gallery. Thank you, Matthew. Any comments? Just indicate if you'd like to. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Matthew. Matthew. For those that don't know, Matthew's actually an alumni of Massey and lived in the city for a number of years. He told me it was good biking around here into the headwinds. But no, also a recipient of our planning awards as well. But on the countdown, I think this is a fantastic initiative for the city. It really, strategy-wise, it really backs up that logistics and distribution sector for us. You've seen the size of the building. That's 39,000 square metres. That's huge. It's bigger than the Easy Buy building, so that's give you some scale in terms of the size. you know, the jobs go without saying, 150 construction jobs over both sites, 130 new jobs, 80 new jobs in Awapuni. I think that's fantastic in the southwest suburbs. There was a few comments about the consenting, and I'd have to say it was difficult at the start, but I do think we've come to a really good end, and I'd have to say all parties were really constructive when there was some changes to the resource consent, and it went through constructively, and with all parties trying to meet in the middle. But thank you to Countdown and Woolworths New Zealand for their investment in our city.
Thank you. Councillor Hapara.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Great to see the old site finally being built on again from when it was the former Awapuni Hotel. Just great to see that development finally taking some shape, and be good for the city to see that end of town to get that Countdown put on, and it's also good to see Woolworths put that distribution centre into the city, so well done to Progressive for putting this into the city.
Any others wanting to make comment before I make comment? Thank you. I'd again echo both the Mayor and Councillor Hapara's comments around fits so well strategically with our logistics and distribution. The investment's significant, the added benefit of jobs, and again with the Pioneer Highway site, I've had involvement in its prior life as a rugby club, seen it now actually with plans, and no doubt you'll be putting the foot on go to get it completed by August, because we're almost got the year complete. So it's great activity for construction and jobs. So again, that will follow up. We'll be interested in those logistic movements for vehicles for that road safety element onto Railway Road, and that's only going to put more and more pressure as more and more development happens up in the northeast industrial. But very excited. Thank you for making time this morning to come down, and appreciate your flexibility around the presentation time. But we love partnering with your company, and thank you very much again. Councillors, I now invite you to vote. That's passed, 15 votes for and none against. Thank you. That moves us on to item 4, which is public comment. Before we just move in, we've had another update just with presenters and availability in an unusual circumstance, having presentations coming on both committees. But after public comment, we will go ahead and take the presentation from Nzta at item 6. And they're here in attendance and aren't available in the afternoon. So that just gives an update. But item 4 is public comment. I'd like to welcome Maxine Johnson and Mr. Vince Lockwood on public comment. Their item is in regard to an item that's not on our order paper, but is coming to the committee next month, the Summerhill Cycleway and the consultation process. As they're presenting as two people, I've already extended with the agreement with the chair to extend another 3 minutes to their time, so they'll have 6 minutes to present. Welcome again, Maxine and Vince. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you for letting us speak at your meeting. Doubtless you would have received our email, which we sent to every single councillor we could find. So I hope you had a chance to read that. So we're here to speak on our submission regarding the process of and the lack of consultation regarding the Summerhill Cycleway, which includes the removal of all roadside parking, the addition of a barriered cycleway, which is going to restrict entering and exiting the driveways along Summerhill Drive, and that creates a problem with just the restriction of the traffic that goes along there, and there's 15,000 vehicles a day driving along that road currently. Our concerns really come around that the Palmerston North City Council have been aware of the Summerhill Drive cycleway since November 2016, having instigated and received from via Strata the report Summerhill Drive Walking and Cycling Improvements. We were notified on the 7th of September this year, and as a resident up there, it was a bit of a shock. So this contact was by way of a consultation booklet in which we were invited to vote on one of two options and comment on either or both of those options. It didn't invite the respondent to have their say on any other options. It didn't ask for any other options, and that's when we became aware that this had been in planning for quite a long time, but we were suddenly the tail end Charlies. So the booklet advised us that there were two drop-in sessions, one on the 22nd and one on the 26th of September. We attended the 26th of September, and this was 1 week prior to the deadline for this voting. The drop-in session provided only provided the plans of the options and the consultation booklet. The representatives of the council were only there to listen to and answer questions on those two options. They couldn't provide us with any of the information we asked for, no statistics, no nothing, okay? The deadline to respond to these two options was originally the 2nd of October. They extended it for the 5th of October. Despite many requests to the Palmerston North City Council for statistics and other information, it wasn't until the 7th of October that we were first made aware of a lot of documentation, and it came through the MP's office. This included the Urban Cycle Network Master Plan 2019 brochure. In this brochure it states we need to work with affected communities to demonstrate why change is needed and to explore alternatives that meet shared livability, accessibility and safety objectives. Summerhill Drive is very effective by both these options. The Urban Cycle Network Master Plan states that in mid-2017, the Council began the process of the Urban Cycleway planning. In November 2017, there was an active and public transport forum. Between December 2017 and January 2018, a business plan and master plan forum. In March 2019, a briefing with people on bikes forum and workshops with councillors. On the 13th of May to the 5th of July 2019, public consultation of the draft master plan. On August 2019, People on Bikes Forum briefing on a revised master plan. So prior to us getting this booklet on the 7th of September, that all this work had been going on in the background that as residents and ratepayers we weren't even aware of. We never had a chance to talk. So they haven't consulted with the Summerhill Drive residents, and these two options are going to have really serious and negative effects on us. To us, the council now is setting a dangerous precedent and showing a blatant disregard for ratepayers who are affected by the council's actions, including no direct consultation with us, the directly involved people. We would expect that we'd be contacted directly and during the planning, the stages, and before decisions are actually made. To be told that funding had already been allocated and that the plan was due to go ahead over the summer months this year indicates to us that the options are a foregone conclusion, and the Palmerston North City Council has tried to railroad us, the ratepayers, into accepting this. So what we're asking for is that you postpone this whole thing and give the residents and the people affected in Summerhill Drive, which is not just Summerhill Drive, but also the side roads, a chance to offer some alternatives. And there are some very good alternatives. And I'm not sure whether this is the place to put it forward, but one of the things that has to be taken into consideration is our ageing population. And there's already a current cycleway in place now, so there's no particular hurry to charge and get things done now. But, one of the options we see is they're using the grass verge to put in a dedicated, separated cycleway, similar to they've done in Wellington, the same they've done in Wanganui, and other cities around the country. We are not against the cycleways as such, but when it comes to creating the problems that we're going to see in Summerhill Drive, then I don't think people have actually thought this out. I mean, it sounds really nice. I mean, great, the cyclists are going to be racing down there. But are they? Are they going to be safe? So that's our problems.
Thank you. That's the conclusion of the 6-minute time. There will be possibility of questions if I call on members to indicate. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for coming in. I did just want to give you the opportunity to follow up on a couple of the comments you made just in that end section there. First, you referenced the ageing population, but you didn't say particularly what your concern with that was.
Well, it's just the access for people not being able to park outside their houses, or people coming to visit them in the event of family events. We were told, oh, park on the side streets. We said, have you asked the side street residents? And they admitted no, they hadn't. So what we're saying is that if you can't park outside the house, you've got limited access to get into your house, and it's quite a distance around the various side streets to be able to walk back up again. So yeah, that's one of our concerns. And we're also thinking that a dedicated cycleway with room for mobility scooters and such forth would be also beneficial.
Thank you for that. And the second comment I just noted was about something about creating the problem we're going to see in Summerhill Drive. And I wondered if you would explain for us, please, what the problem is that you see if we go ahead with either of those options.
Well, what they're talking about is having a separated cycleway with a flexible barrier on it on the side of the road, okay? So if you're travelling eastwards on Summerhill Drive and you try and turn into your property, it's only a one-lane road, and there's cyclists already moving in that area, in the you can't go in there. There's no room to pull over, so you're going to have to stop in the middle of the road. Now, the traffic's going to have to stop with you. That's what I see. Now, I'm not saying there's going to be hundreds of cyclists every day racing up and down there. At this stage, they told us there's 114 a day, but it gives that issue of if someone stops to turn into their driveway, there's going to be a concertina effect, and that's one of the things we are concerned about. Yeah, and the other thing is that the flexible barrier is not really going to stop a vehicle moving off the road into the cycle lane. So, and we're not even sure what they mean by a flexible barrier as yet. We don't really know what they mean,
Okay, so just so I've got it right, your concern is mostly that if people are trying to turn right, that's going to slow down or stop the traffic flow.
Not necessarily turn right, but even turning into your driveway, turning left, whatever. You're going to have to stop. There is no place to go, so you stop in the middle of the road, and that's it, So.
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
No worries.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming in and talking to us. I just wanted to make sure that I'd understood you correctly. Is the loss of parking a significant issue for you?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Do residents have parking on property in that area?
Yes, they do. They have access into their driveways, obviously into garages and such forth. Yep.
So can you explain why the loss of parking is so significant?
Well, like if we take our house, for example, there's enough room for 2 cars in the driveway, but what happens if we have our children come home and they need to park? Or if someone comes to visit, where do they park? And what about how many households have more than 2 cars? And there's nowhere to park other than round the corner, down the road, whatever. That's the issue. Yeah.
Pardon?
You had a family gathering or a funeral.
Okay. Yep, thank you. I just trying to understand what the main issue is, because I wonder how that issue would be addressed by postponing the consultation, because ultimately, unless there was a different outcome at the end of it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you probably still wouldn't be satisfied, even if it was postponed, if at the end of the day the parking was lost. Is that right?
Well, we're saying postpone it until you've heard the chance of the other options, and then comparing those options to what infrastructure you've got available or funding you've got available, at least come back to us and be able to say, well, we've looked at your option or looked at the other people's options, we've decided this is going to be the way we go. At the end of the day, you will make a decision, whatever it is. Whether we agree with that is by the by, I suppose. But what I'd like to think is that when you're considering the options, you've got all the options in front of you. And if you're going to do something, do it once, do it right. It might cost a bit more, but the fact that if you do it properly and do it right the first time, and there's no doubt that that area further out is expanding. I mean, the housing's being built out there, and having, to us, like a dedicated cycleway compared to basically like a cheaper version, so to speak, is something to be considered, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for coming in to speak to us. I just wanted to make sure I'm clear about the issue around the consultation. Obviously, you listed a few, booklets and various consultation and drop-in sessions and those sorts of things that had come out. One of the points you made, though, was that there were two options presented, and you were asked to have your say on those two options. And so am I right in understanding that you felt that it was too prescribed? It wasn't open to say, actually, we want to do something up there. What are your thoughts? Would that have been your preference?
That's exactly right. We would have preferred if they said, look, this is the options we're looking at, and do you have any other ideas? Do you have any other options? And this could have been done months ago, years ago, but they didn't. They just said, choose one of these two options. And both those options weren't acceptable to us. Yeah.
And did I hear you correctly that you found out about this because there was something in the mail?
Yes.
So with a couple of the other things like the Cycle Master Plan for the city, for example, there was a public consultation on that, but it would have been advertised, through social media, online, in the newspaper, those sorts of things. So do you think that the best way to actually consult on some of these more significant issues is actually going straight to the letterbox rather than... Well, how else would you be made aware of these?
Well, I think if you're directly affected, the area that's directly affected, I think there should be some kind of medium to be able to get to them. I mean, I don't belong to Facebook, okay? To be honest, I don't read the newspaper. We all use different mediums for that sort of thing. So how do you contact people like us? I just think that if you're in an area that's directly affected, and in this instance, they're probably looking at 150 houses along the main road anyway. Even if they did a simple drop in those letterboxes, the word would soon spread, and that would be simple.
And do you think you would have been more satisfied with the consultation if perhaps the proposal for the two options was still there, but actually it was a little bit more, the conversation was a little wider to actually seek your views if you had an alternative suggestion? Or do you think that, I guess I'm trying to see how actually next time we can do this better, and perhaps we need to be a little bit more open from the beginning if that's what I'm hearing from you.
Well, what we're saying is that certainly come to us and say, this is some of the options we've got, or this is some of the ideas we've got, and then ask for any other ideas or submissions. At least we've got a chance to have our say. The two people from the council that were at the drop-in session, I think were dropped in it, really. That's the word, because they didn't have all the answers. They wasn't really their fault. But I think just the fact that giving us the chance to have our say first, and then saying to us, right, we've looked at all your options. These are the two we've decided, and that's it. But not just say, here's the two options, and give us no opportunity to give any other ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you, the Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vince. Thanks, Maxine. Look, in the options, I mean, some of the questions have already been asked by others, but in those options, because I live up there and I got the thing as well, wasn't there a turning bay in one of the options?
They were talking about closing parking on either both sides or one side, and they were putting a strip medium up through the centre. So that would allow you to be able to turn right into the side streets.
Yep. Okay.
That's, eh? But not left, yeah, that's one of the options, yeah.
Okay, and you spoke about parking, and it's been teased out by a couple of the other elected members, but wasn't there 15 off-street inset parks part of the plans as well?
There was an area of 12 parks at certain portions of the street, but it's a fairly long road, and that, again, the same problem. There's only 12 parking places from initially 120, which is, you know, a 90% reduction, really.
Yeah, but is there only...
Everyone parks on the road, I realise, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd go through it, and there's, to be fair, there's hardly anybody parked there the majority of the time. And in the submission form, couldn't you make you could suggest other ideas?
Not the way it worded it, no.
The way it was worded, it said pick option A or what option B.
I thought there was a part at the end where you could give comments.
Yeah.
And it said, do you have comments on option A or do you have comments on the other option?
Okay, I thought it was a general...
Well, the way it worded it,
Okay.
I mean, it could have been ambiguous, but to us
Okay.
it meant you're only commenting on that option A.
Okay,
option
so
B.
you wanted more of a generalistic options here. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Any other questions from members? Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Can you just clarify, are you presenting on behalf of the Summerhill residents, or is it just yourself?
No, it's just ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Call again. Is there any other questions? Thank you both. Thank you, Maxine. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.
I'll move the recommendation that the public comment from Mrs. Maxine Johnson and Mr. Vince Lockwood be received for information, seconded by Councillor Bowen. Invite you to vote. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. There's passed 15 votes for and none against. Again, just mentioning that report is due to come to infrastructure on the 2nd of December, I understand, and we'll communicate with you if there's any other change to that. Now I'd like to welcome Yanko Broderick, Principal of Whakaronga School, who's wishing to speak regarding item 8, which is the zebra crossing on James Line. Welcome this morning.
Kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity. I want to start off by thanking the council for the support that they have provided our school and our community over the last couple of years, both regarding the construction of the footpath along the railway line, as well as the realignment of Stony Creek Road. Both of these investments has made a huge difference to, number one, the safety, both of the community and the kids, and also improved the traffic flow to a great degree. So thank you very much for that. Regarding James Line, our first correspondence, if I can call it, regarding the plans for that was provided by myself and the board chair by Simon Eggers and Robert Snyders from the council. And according to those plans, there were going to be 3 crossings on James Line, one on the riverside of the railway line, one closer to the road turning off, and then one opposite the end of the walking track. Obviously, the one by the walking track would be the one that we were specifically interested in, because that would be the one that being used by our students. So we had a discussion with the 2 gentlemen, and at the end of the discussion, we believe that there has been agreement that that specific crossing would be changed to a zebra crossing. So we communicated that with our community, and we left it there. Then suddenly we realized that there were quite a number of changes that have occurred. Number one, as far as I believe, some other people actually became or were responsible for this project, not the people that spoke to us originally. The 3 crossings were reduced to 2. The position of the crossing was changed, and there was no zebra crossing anymore. So these changes were never communicated to us, and we never had the opportunity to comment or discuss this with anybody. So regarding the zebra crossing itself, originally when the walking track was planned and supported by the council, I believe we can all agree there was a clear understanding that creating a safe crossing for students at the James Line end would be part of that big picture. Because what is the point of building a walking track to keep kids safe if they can't get onto it or off it in a safe manner? The second point that I want to raise, and I do understand the council officials' point regarding zebra crossings and the research that have been done. The reality, though, that makes us slightly different from most other crossings of the type is that on a good day, we have between 200 and 250 students crossing James Line. And many of them are 5, 6, 7, and 8 years old. And that is where the difference comes in between them and the normal public. Those students do not have the ability to judge under the current crossings whether a vehicle is slowing down to stop, whether they won't stop. They are really little kids. And in order to help them to navigate that road safely, we need to give them far more security and clearness that this is a zebra crossing and that vehicles are expected to stop. If these kids were older or in the secondary school, I wouldn't be here because we can judge and navigate that ourselves. But many of these kids are young, they are little, they do not have that ability, and therefore I want you to seriously consider the motion that have been put forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Yonko. Is there questions from members? Councillor Harpiter, followed by Councillor Finlay.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this forward, coming in for public comment. When did you first talk to the council? You said that you talked to someone called Simon and Robert. When do you think that was? What year was that?
That was during the construction project of the realignment of James Line, which is quite a few months ago. And because at that stage, the crossings on, or the pedestrian crossings on James Line was still in the planning phase, because they had to wait for Transrail to install the railway crossing on James Line. So these were going to follow in the process. So it's at that point that we were handed copies of the proposed plan for the crossings to be installed on James Line.
So in those plans, it did say to the school that there would be zebra crossings on James Line?
The plan that we originally received did not say that. The plan that we received were these ones, and on it, it indicated the position of the 3 different crossings. And it was based on these ones that we had the discussion with the 2 gentlemen. And basically, we believe came to an agreement that the middle one would be changed from the way it was on here into a zebra crossing. Because all 3 were the type of crossings that has been installed in the meantime with a cage in the middle of the road.
So the one that's there at the moment, is that satisfactory?
No, it's not, and because it doesn't provide the certainty for the kids when they use that, when they cross the road. These young kids, because vehicles do not have to stop.
So there's safety.
It is simply
concerns.
a safe haven for them in the middle, and like I said, for any older person or an adult, I believe it would be great. But for 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, it is not.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, a couple of questions. If this new patrol goes in there, the new crossing goes in there, will you have a school patrol before and after school at that crossing?
No, because we're not asking for a school patrol crossing. We're asking for a zebra crossing. It's too far away for us to get equipment, staff, and students there. It's more than a kilometre away from the school.
Okay,
so it's not practical for us to do that.
But you're saying, how many students do you say would cross it in a day?
Between 200 and 250 on a day when the weather is good.
School?
Yeah. So what we do, we patrol the railway crossing by the school to get them safely onto the track on that side. So what we're asking for is a zebra crossing on the other side where vehicles approaching have to stop for pedestrians.
Okay. Is your school, does it have school limit signs outside it when the school comes in and comes out? You know, the speed limit signs that will come up?
No, we don't have those. We have talked to the council about that, but at that point we were told that there were only a certain number available and that other schools inside the city were ahead of us on that list.
Okay.
But the issue that we talk about is not actually outside the school. It is at the other end of the walking track, which is on James Line.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you for coming in. Just two questions. The first, I think, has been explored a little bit already by Councillor Finlay in terms of the decision for the school not to man a crossing. So is that simply because of the distance from the school? Like if it was, you know, how are those decisions made as to whether or not to man a crossing?
Well, that type of crossing was never offered to us, but to be honest, we've never asked for it because there are some serious practical problems with getting the equipment there and getting a staff member there by 3 o'clock and back to school by 9, because it isn't like most other schools. It's basically either opposite the gate or just a little bit down the road. Somebody will have to get in a vehicle to drive down there, or otherwise it takes a good 15 minutes to walk. So it's not. We don't believe that is practical, and that's not. We're also not asking for it.
Okay. The second question is: are you aware of the officer's report that is a part of
I'm aware of that,
today?
and they have been to see us after all this work was done, to explain their concerns regarding the zebra type crossing. And that's why I've said I understand where they're coming from in terms of some of the research and stuff. To me, the difference, though, is that I think that's based on your average population, and we are talking here about 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds, or a significant number of them, and they are different in terms of navigating roads.
Okay, just to tease that out, just one further question. So in the report, it's been suggested if we were to proceed with a zebra crossing at the place that you're talking about, that the risk would be that it would be a poor safety treatment and would contribute to avoidable injury or even death. Are you able to?
Yeah, that's their opinion.
Okay, thank you.
That's all, Councillor Naylor. Thank you. Can I limit members to just one question if they have more, because of our 30-minute time limit for public comment? But the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Jaco, for coming in to speak to us. I'm just wondering, in regards to, you talked about you had sort of been involved in a couple of different discussions around, you know, the realignment, the pathway, the James Line upgrade, and your support for those. Was your support not conditional on the crossing, but your support was with the understanding that there was a safe crossing access at the end of that?
Absolutely, and that was the basis for our discussion in the beginning when the original plans were put in front of us, and that is why we talked about the option, and there were some issues, and Mr. Snyders, who I believe is one of the council engineers, said that those things were not really problems that can easily be dealt with. One of them was the distance between the crossing and the railway line, and according to him, and that's why I said we left that discussion under the understanding that there's been an agreement on what will happen. And so we basically just left it there because there's nothing more to discuss. And then suddenly we were confronted with something totally different.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Jaco. In terms of safe crossing for children in that spot, is your support for a zebra crossing because you think that is the safest option, or is it because that's what you were offered first and so you feel that that's been, in some sense, gone back on? Because I'm feeling that perhaps neither the current situation or even a zebra crossing is safe enough, given what you've just said. But what's your opinion? Are you plumping for a zebra because you think that's obtainable, or do you really think that's ultimately the safest way to get kids across that road?
Well, to be honest, I don't know what all the other options might be. As far as I'm aware, between the options that I'm aware of, the zebra crossing would be the safer one for kids that age. But I mean, to be honest, I don't know what all other options might be, because they've originally the plan had 3 crossings similar to the 2 that they've installed. So we discussed the middle one, which is by the end of the track, and then we believe managed to convince the council staff to change that one. Mm-hmm. And that is where we left the discussion, because there was, to us, nothing more to talk about.
Yeah. So, so just to be clear, then your message is that the current situation isn't safe enough, and you would like something safer. And at the moment, you're aware of a zebra crossing, which you think will be safer, but ultimately, it's about a safer option to cross.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to indicate that there's 3 more members, and out of standing orders 1.4.3, I'm extending my discretion to extend 3 more questions, 1 each from Councillor Barrett, Councillor Hancock and Councillor Bowen, to conclude public comment in that order. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Jaco, for coming in. A bit building on where Councillor Johnson was, I've struggled to understand why this continues to be an either-or sort of discussion when in many places, including in this city, we have zebra crossings with pedestrian refuges. And if you would be comfortable or had considered an and option that said zebra crossing that also had an element of refuge in it.
Absolutely. All I want is more certainty for especially our younger students that approaching vehicles will stop and give them a chance to cross the road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Jaco, for coming in and presenting to us today. But I'm just trying to get a little bit of an orientation around this this walking track. I've been up and actually had a look at this, and like we've got a pedestrian sanctuary on the north side of the railway crossing, and also one on the south side. So I'm just wondering where that walking track actually comes out onto James Line, and which of the 2 requires the zebra crossing, that, in your opinion?
It's the one on the northern side, because that is where the vast majority of kids cross. And the track comes out onto James Line a couple of metres on the northern side of the railway line. So at the moment, it is the track is between the refuge on the upper side and the railway line. Originally, the 2 refuges one was going to be built closer to the railway line, and one a bit further up the hill towards the road that turns to the left, which I can't remember the name of now. But this one have now ended up sort of somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming in to speak to this agenda item. I just want to get a sense, probably in terms of just context of the decision. You talked about 200 to 250 students using that crossing to walk in, or scooter or something, into school, and that's great. Can you give us a sense of the proportion of those that will be unaccompanied, so are coming without an adult?
The vast majority.
All the way through, or just to get them across the road?
That is very hard to put a number on, because there are some kids that are being dropped off in that area, but some of them are being dropped off on the other side of the road, so it's a little bit hard for me to determine exactly of how many of them actually crosses the road by themselves.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Janko, for bringing this item to our attention and through public comment. And
thank you.
Appreciate it. This item will now not be heard until likely mid-afternoon. I'll move the public comment from Janko Broderick, Principal of Whakaronga School, be received, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. and invite you to vote. Thank you. That's passed 15 votes for and none against. That concludes public comment, which means we'll now move to item 6, which is the presentation from Nzta, and welcome Mr. Lonnie Dalziel, Owner Infrastructure Manager, and Dr. Mark Long, People, Safety and Cultural Manager from Waka Kotahi New Zealand Transport Agency. Welcome back, both you, again to the table, this time in the council chamber. Welcome.
Ka whakahaere o Palmerston North City Council Infrastructure Committee, tēnā koutou.
Morena koutou, we understand that lunch is next, so we'll try and be as succinct as possible, of course.
Thank you very much for having us here. It's always nice to come and be able to present on our project. I often say that it's really nice to have people who want to hear us. My family's sick of hearing about my project, so really do appreciate you having us here. We thought we would keep it fairly informal, give a brief verbal update, and then allow you to ask questions. I think we kind of ran out of time last time, so we will talk less and listen more. So my name's Lonnie Dalziel. I think many of you were at the last presentation when we were at the conference centre. Owner Interface Manager, representative Waka Kotahi on the Alliance. And I'll let Mark introduce himself.
Mark Long, the People and Culture Manager for Te Ako Tūranga, the Alliance.
So just spend a couple of minutes giving you a brief update from our last presentation. One of the key items that was raised at the last time was a lot of the social aspects of our project, all of the wider benefits, I think you'd probably call it that. From a housing perspective was one that actually took a number of questions. We're still working through that. It's obviously a very new aspect. Waka Kotahi has not done this before since we were probably Ministry of Works, and we used to build things like the dam villages at Waitaki Valley and other things like that. So we're still working around the mechanics of how the project can minimise the impact on the housing market. Mark's got a bit more information around some of the other things we're looking at, but from a Waka Kotahi perspective, trying something new is really exciting. And we're just making sure we have all the support and working with potentially other government agencies to deliver such probably something that has challenged BAU on how we deliver projects. So it's often these more meaningful aspects that take a little bit more time to get right, and we're still working on that in the background. From a project perspective, things are going to plan. We're unfortunately still waiting on our regional consent, which is still sitting with the Environment Court. And we are expecting that any time. There's no necessarily any difficulties, it's just a timing matter. And we have started our enabling works. So if anyone who's ventured out to the Manawatu Gorge walking trail up to see Whātonga, you'll have seen a big white building on the side of the road, which is our new dwelling for the next 4.5 years. And we're looking forward to moving into there in the very near future. You will also start to see a number of works happening on Saddle Road. So a number of our enabling works were ensuring that our public is kept safe and how we minimise that impact on Saddle Road, because obviously it is the main connection between east and west at the moment. So a number of intersection improvements. So we separate construction and public traffic, and looking at about 3 different intersections of our main movements. You'll also potentially see a few other things around erosion and sediment control, our water, our construction water, and access tracks being undertaken over the next few months. Pass it on to Mark.
Thanks. I think I've got the best job in the Manawatu. We have a workforce that wants to be here. We have more people that want to come than we can possibly take. We have a local community that is fully backing us, and we have outcomes to minimise our negative impact locally and to maximise our positive legacy over time. Most notably, I think for the Infrastructure Committee, would be around our Jobs and Training Open Day. As part of our minimising effort with regard to hiring local, minimising the people coming in, and maximising the impact on housing, we are looking at ways that we can upskill local people. We had more than 700 applications at 2 sites for our Jobs and Training Open Day. We anticipate around 50% are currently able to
be upskilled further to work on the project. Another 30% are getting upskilled to come into the sector, and around 20% are being invited to learn about the sector. Of those, we've employed a handful of people, and we're working with several dozen others on what the opportunities look like, noting our ramping up is going to be over the next 12 months. So we have a long list of applicants and candidates that we'll keep in touch with over the next 12 months, and indeed the life cycle of our project. With regard to housing, because it hasn't moved as fast as we would have originally hoped for, we are looking at other ways by way of what current accommodation opportunities are there that aren't readily accessible to local people. We are currently in negotiations with local accommodation providers, and we've got around 30 bed spaces that are available to us, which are more than enough at the moment.
Just one thing on the training, Jobs and Training Day, and the ramping up over the next 12 months, why we had it so early was to allow us to understand the capabilities and what training needed to be undertaken. So as we do build up, we can actually put people through that training to meet the needs of the project moving forward. So it's one of the reasons why it actually happened so early in the piece. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, we could talk for a long time, but I think we'll open to
Open for questions then. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for coming in today. A couple of questions. So in regards to the local recruitment, you talked about the 700 plus applications you've had, and then the handful that you've already recruited and others that you're sort of talking to. How many, can you remind me how many positions you were, or you estimate that you'll be filling from the local pool overall? Just
at least 60% is our anticipation. Noting that for a fast start, we will be likely needing to buy in resource based on the applications that we had from that open day. The local talent pool isn't quite where we need it currently, so we will build that up over time, but we're buying in more resource from out of town initially.
Sorry, 60% of what?
Of the workforce.
No, but have you got a number of bodies? Are you actually only recruiting 20 people? Are you recruiting 500? What is 60% of?
Oh, of up to 400.
400, okay, thank you. The new site that's popped up just outside of Ashurst, how many are you thinking are going to be based there as their place of work for the next wee while?
We have up to 100 spaces available there.
And when are you expecting external people to start arriving in the city?
They have already started arriving.
So I think I'm probably talking more about maybe the critical mass that's coming. So in regards to the housing, you've talked about the plans to obviously ensure that the impact is minimal locally, and you've got your 30 beds arranged elsewhere. But I'm just kind of wondering when your larger workforce is expected to sort of, are we thinking that's in the next...
Summer of 21-22 is when we ramp up to near our peak.
Thank you, that was what I was after. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Councillor Brent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks both for coming in and keeping us right in the loop on how things are going. Just sort of thinking of that workforce being here and those numbers of people, I guess just wondering what's the overall expected pattern of deployment of those people? Is it going to be sort of 8 to 5-ish type stuff, or is there going to be a lot of split shift or even round the clock type stuff at certain times during the project?
That's still to be confirmed, but there will be a split shift of sorts. How many of that is, we're still deciding. And again, that will ramp up over time.
Great, thank you.
During the tender process, there was also a policy of working plant harder, not people. So if you can double shift, you can actually work the plant, not the people. So that's why the split shifts are so valuable when you're doing things like earthworks.
So an expensive piece of gear, you can keep it running longer with
Correct.
2 people. Yeah. Great, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Long and Lonnie.
Mark will suffice, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sure I was out of the room, but did you touch on the role iwi have played?
No, I didn't, but I certainly can.
Yeah, thank you.
So, as everyone may be aware, we've kind of taken a new approach on how we partner with iwi on Waka Kotahi and probably major infrastructure projects throughout Aotearoa. Iwi have we've attempted a genuine partnership. So iwi were part of the preparation of our tender, the regional consenting of our design, and it will be active through our construction. One of the big outcomes, obviously our regional consents had 0 appeals. It had 0 opposition going into the Environment Court. And having our iwi partners involved in that was one of the big reasons why we could achieve that. And one of the other big outcomes is, as you look through our management plans and how the project's been designed in construction, you'll start to see things like the mahi toi, which is the cultural design. We've gone through a process of integrated mahi toi, so it's about seeing the cultural expression throughout the project, not just at certain aspects, and that's built into the bridge design, having a more feminine shape to match things like the Ruahine ranges, about the two wahine, and just throughout the project in terms of planting, lookout points, wayfinders. So it's really exciting to see that started right from the beginning, because in the past, generally the approach has been do the design and tack the cultural expression on at the end, which you don't really feel like it has the spirit of the project. We also have kaimahi working within the project, so ensuring Māori outcomes are witnessed and promoted throughout the alliance, and having our kaitiaki. So we've actually getting kaitiaki full-time on the project, which is the first time for that as well. So we actually build skill base in more than just the cultural expression, which is something that is really exciting moving into the construction industry. Just as a heads up, we're also, Te Arawhiti are doing a case study on the project to see how the lessons learned from this project can be used on other major infrastructure, and all of our iwi partners are supporting that. Is there anything else in specific, or was it, yeah, no, it's there was another one around the infrastructure aspect as well, and I know Councillor Barrett would know about this one, and that's the recreational path fund. So we'll look to have that up and running early next year. We're just working through the structure and how we evaluate and developing a template in terms of how applications to that fund can be submitted. So that'll come out next year.
No other questions, councillors? Thank you very much, Lonnie, and thank you, Mark. I appreciate the update, and there may be comments still to come, but thank you again for keeping us informed, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the new year, no doubt.
Ngā mihi. No, thank you.
Cool. I'd like to move that the committee resolve that the presentation be received from Nzta and seconded by Councillor Hancock. Open it up for any comment or debate. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I think this is another great project. We've got a few of them on the go at the moment, which is fantastic. You can tell that Dr. Long and Lonnie are well versed in this whole project, and I pulled out the iwi aspect because it is truly very different to how infrastructure projects have been done in New Zealand before. To that note, it's actually up for an award, the co-design for the New Zealand Infrastructure Awards in Auckland in a couple of weeks. And I was fortunate enough with the other mayors to see the signing of an agreement, an MOU, at the Marae at Woodville, and it was really special. It's very, very genuine. So this is a great project. It's going to be here with us for, they said, 4.5 years. We should really hold them on that, because it is a real connector, obviously, to the East Coast, and obviously for people to come to us in central New Zealand. So it's truly is a good project.
Thank you. Any other comments? Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just thought I'd make a comment because I have been particularly critical of Nzta and the communication, especially in respects to Ashurst in the past, but they are warming up to me. And I have been really impressed with the aspect the Mayor's just mentioned around their partnership with iwi, but also the consideration of the impact of what this project is going to have on our community. And it's really great to see their efforts around housing and also recruiting locally, because I imagine that with large-scale projects it probably is easier to actually just organise your workforce and bring them in and sort of offload them to the community for a short time. But there have been real efforts made to recruit locally, upskill locally, and yeah, it's really, really quite pleasing to see. And as the Mayor said, we haven't really seen this before, so the award nomination doesn't particularly surprise me at this stage. But yeah, I've been very impressed. Thank you.
Great, thank you. No further comments. My comments would have just echoed the Mayor's, so therefore I'd invite you to vote. Thank you. That's passed 15 votes for and none against. I'll now adjourn this committee until the conclusion of community development, and it will just be a couple minute turnaround, and we'll, Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Councillor Dennison. We'll just give staff a couple of minutes to do the turnaround, but my plan is to continue community development until 1 o'clock and then take lunch at that point, and hopefully we'll be finished by then.
Got the 18 back.